There was a time when Ada and Ikin didn't know the meaning of goodbye. Back then, their world was a one-room mud house in the village of Olo, surrounded by cassava bushes, laughter, and hunger. They didn't have much, but they had each other. Ada was only 4 when the flood came. A real flood. The type that swallowed goats and carried people's secrets downstream. She had held Ikin's hand tightly that morning as their mother tied their remaining clothes in a torn Gonomosgo bag. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days, and their house had already started cracking. They were going to live with Momo's cousin in Owerri, just until the river calmed down, she said. But fate had a different plan. On the way, as their tired feet trudged along the flooded path near the highway, a lorry skidded off the road. In the screaming and chaos, Ada slipped and fell backward, straight into a shallow ditch. Her head hit a rock, and she blacked out. When she woke up, Ikin was gone. She never saw him again. They told her he had died. Mama cried for days. The cousin they were meant to stay with blamed her. "If only you had held your daughter tighter," she whispered coldly. Ada was left with a faint scar on her cheek and a silence in her chest that followed her everywhere. She grew up washing people's clothes, sweeping shops, and cleaning offices just to survive. Her mother passed away 5 years later from untreated illness. And Ada? She learned how to carry herself quietly. No one ever asked where her brother was again. But every now and then, she'd wake from a dream where someone was still holding her hand. Far away, in a well-kept mansion in Port Harcourt, Ikin sat at a long dining table, unable to touch his food. He had been adopted by a wealthy childless couple who found him half-conscious and bleeding on the side of that same road. They renamed him Iken, gave him a new life, and flew him abroad. But even with luxury, something always felt unfinished. A missing thread. A forgotten name that tugged at his soul. Until the day he found the photo, and the memory came crashing back. A little girl. A tiny scar. And the last word he screamed before they were pulled apart, Ada. They called her, the girl who sweeps the road like she's wiping her own tears. Ada never responded. Every morning, before the sun stretched its arm over the rooftops of the city, she'd tie her afro puff up, wear her brown cotton gown, slip into her faded pink apron, and walk to the corner where the streets met the rich people's lives. It was her job to clean the walkway outside a big plaza in the city center, a place full of important people who never looked down long enough to see her face. They stepped over her broom. They shouted when her bucket of water spilled near their shoes. They laughed when she greeted and didn't reply. But she never stopped sweeping. Because Ada had learned early, dignity was something you protect even when your stomach is empty. At lunchtime, she would sit by a narrow gutter edge with her metal plate of rice and stew, cold, sometimes shared with flies. But she still ate slowly, carefully, as if the world was watching her manners. Some of the other cleaners mocked her. "Fine girl forming, madam," one of them once said. "See who they cross-legged to chop and 200 food," another laughed. Ada just smiled. She had no strength left for bitterness. That particular Thursday, the air smelled like warning. The sky had poured itself out during the night, leaving the streets damp and full of soft puddles. Ada was already halfway through sweeping when the guards at the plaza gate shooed her to the side. "Shift, I beg." "One madam they come." She know they like traffic. Ada obeyed. She moved close to the edge of the street, just beside a large, still puddle of muddy water. She didn't see the car yet, but she heard it. The loud hum of a black SUV, rich, fast, and impatient. Then it happened. The tire spun straight into the puddle. A thick wave of dirty brown water rose like a curtain, and collapsed right over her body. It hit her in the chest, the face, her arms, her legs, everything. She froze. The broom dropped. People screamed. One schoolgirl nearby gasped. A fruit seller covered her mouth. Ada didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply stood there, soaked in mud, her pink apron stained, her hair dripping, her lips trembling, her heart pounding. And that was when she noticed something. The passenger window of the SUV. A man inside was staring at her. Not just staring, frozen. His face pressed slightly against the glass, eyes wide like he'd seen a ghost. His lips parted, brows raised, and in his lap, it looked like he was holding an old, faded photo. Their eyes locked. Just for a second. And then the car moved on. That night, Ada didn't sleep. Not because of the mud. Not because of the laughter. But because of the way that man looked at her. Like he had been searching. And somehow, he had found her. The rich lady behind the wheel didn't slow down. She never did. Her name was Lola, skin like caramel butter, lips painted wine red, and eyes permanently hidden behind glossy black sunglasses. She didn't believe in speed bumps, potholes, or puddles. After all, her SUV could handle anything. She leaned back in her seat, one hand on the steering wheel, the other adjusting the volume of her music. Her nails were long and gold-tipped. Her perfume filled the car like pride. Beside her, Ken, calm, sharp-suited, and silent, stared out of the window, lost in thought. He wasn't really listening to her small talk about influencers, her father's new land in Banana Island, or how much she paid for her wig. He had something else on his mind. Something was tugging at his chest that morning. A strange heaviness. They turned the corner. The SUV dipped, just a little, into a puddle near the gutter. Splash. Water exploded across the street. Brown, thick, and angry. Ken barely flinched. Until he looked up. That's when he saw her. A young woman, completely soaked in mud. Her brown gown clung to her body. Her apron was ruined. Her hair dripped down her forehead in clumps of wet curls. But it wasn't the mess that caught him, it was the scar. That small, thin scar under her left cheek. Time slowed. His breathing stopped. He leaned forward. His eyes widened. She looked up, right at him. And in that 1 second, everything collapsed. It was her. It was Ada. The scar. The eyes. The way she stood, proud, even in shame. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. His hand trembled. The photo in his lap, crumpled now, matched the face outside. His baby sister. Ada. Lola laughed. Can you believe that dirty girl stood there like statue? She should thank me. At least now she looks washed. Ken didn't laugh. He didn't move. He couldn't even speak. She looked like she wanted to cry, Lola continued, adjusting her mirror. Anyway, where are we going for brunch? Somewhere rich, please. I'm not in the mood for basic today. Ken turned his head slowly. He didn't look at her. He looked back through the rear window, searching the street. But Ada was gone. He didn't eat brunch that day. He didn't even tell Lola goodbye. He went home, locked the door, and stared at that photograph for hours. His mind spun. How? Why was she cleaning streets? How could I not have known she was alive? He began pacing. And by nightfall, he was standing on that same street again. Searching. Asking. Waiting. Far away, Ada sat on her floor in the tiny room she rented near the market. She had no mirror, but she could still feel the mud on her skin, even after bathing 3 times. She whispered to herself. That man, why did he look at me like that? Her hand brushed her cheek, the scar still there. Still hers. And just like that, the past had come crashing into the present. One splash. One stare. One scar. And everything was about to change. Ken couldn't sleep. Not even for 5 minutes. He kept seeing that scar. That face. The way she stood there, silent, soaked in shame, but still upright. He knew that posture. He remembered it from childhood. Little Ada, refusing to cry even when she scraped her knee. Little Ada, always trying to clean their mother's feet with her tiny hands. Little Ada, who disappeared the day the flood came. And now, she was here. In the same city. Cleaning gutters. By 6 a.m., Ken was dressed, dark jeans, plain shirt, hoodie over his head. He walked the streets like a man possessed. He returned to the same corner. The same muddy road where she had been splashed. She wasn't there. He asked the fruit seller. He asked the security men at the plaza. He asked the boy hawking plantain chips. Nobody knew her name. But one person pointed to a row of small buildings down the street. She dey sweep here sometimes, the boy said. One fine girl wey no dey talk much. Always type of hair. Her eye dey carry something different. He followed the lead. Building by building. Gate by gate. Until he found a brown wooden door with an old mop leaning against it. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, softer. Still no answer. Then, the door opened just a little. And she was standing there. Ada. Her hair was loosely packed. No apron today. Just a plain wrapper and blouse. Her eyes blinked twice when she saw him, but her face didn't change. She didn't scream. She didn't fall. She just stood there, silent, staring at him. And that scar, it was clearer now than ever. Ken reached into his pocket. He pulled out the photo. The old one. Him and her, as children. Her eyes dropped to it. And her breath caught. Silence filled the doorway. Until he finally whispered. Ada, is it really you? Ada's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her hand slowly reached for the photo. She held it like it was made of fire. And then, she stepped outside. Just one step. Her voice came out like a whisper. Ikin. The two of them stood there, grown, bruised by life, but still standing. A brother and a sister. Lost. And found. From inside the house, her pot of rice began to boil over. Steam hissed from the lid. But she didn't move. Neither did he. Because in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not time. Not mud. Not wealth. Not pain. Only the memory of a hand that once held hers. And never should have let go. For hours, they just sat there. Ken on a low wooden stool. Ada by the edge of her small mattress, both hands holding the photo that never left his pocket. He told her everything. How the couple that adopted him changed his name. How he always felt like something was missing, even when he had everything. How one day, he found that old photo at the bottom of a Bible his mother had packed for him, and the scar came rushing back into his memory like thunder. Ada didn't say much. But her eyes did. Sometimes they closed tightly, like trying to erase pain. Other times they stayed wide, almost in disbelief. When he finally said the words, "I search for you," she whispered, "I thought you were dead." And both of them sat in silence as years of confusion, loneliness, and questions melted into shared stillness. The next day, he came back. Not with flowers. But with something more powerful, a file. A business registration. A small check. And a note written in his own handwriting that simply said, "For the one who held my hand when we had nothing." Ada wept. For the first time in years, she let herself cry. But when she looked up, she smiled. Not because of the check. But because someone remembered her. Saw her. Knew her. A week later, she told him. I want to grow on my own. I want to earn it. But thank you. You reminded me who I am. He didn't fight it. He simply said, then I'll walk beside you. That same day, he picked her up and they drove past the muddy road again. As fate would have it, the same rich lady, Lola, was stepping out of her car in front of the plaza. She turned, ready to flash her usual arrogance. Until she saw Ada, stepping down from the SUV, dressed in clean jeans, a tucked-in blouse, and pride. Ada smiled. But not out of spite. Out of strength. Lola blinked, looked from Ada to Ken, then back to Ada. And quickly looked away. Months passed. Ada opened a cleaning company. Dignity Cleaners. She hired girls who had once been mocked like her. She paid them well. She trained them to walk with their heads high. Because dirt on your clothes didn't mean dirt in your soul. Ken. He remained close. Not as her rescuer, but as her brother. Her reminder. Her home. Moral lesson. Never look down on the one beneath you. Because the same mud you splash today may be the ground they rise from tomorrow. This is Folktales by Omar Ebb. Don't forget to like, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe for more emotional African stories that touch the soul. Until next time, walk with kindness. Sparkle's Black Heart.